Yeah. You already know. It's Kappa Kappa. Young millionaires. The general. Okay, I wake up every day. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. Every day I'm getting paid. Man, this life is going great. I just wanna celebrate. I made it in and out of state. $1 million in the case. I got it hidden somewhere safe. I multiply all my millions and really I am extremely wealthy. I distributed my millions with my family. This is just the beginning. I purchased a Lamborghini, driving around the city. Believe me, you haven't seen me. Made it through all the struggle, defeated all of my rivals. I was never entitled, I had to fight for survival. Man, this life is amazing. It's crazy that where we made it. Now I'm living my dreams and I'm barely just getting started. I made it through the struggle back when I was very worried. Now I'm chilling, get my condo, Lamborghinis and Bugatti. I know you in a hurry, but I promise don't be worried. When you see me in the club, I probably got enough to party. I'm a multi-millionaire, getting money everywhere. I ain't tripping on nobody, I just came to celebrate. Yeah, we got the party popping, got the general over here, throwing money in the air, cause we get it every day. I multiply all my millions, now me and my people winning. Moving city to city, I promise that you will see me driving a Lamborghini, but this is just the beginning. $1 million Bugatti, I'm stacking money in the ceiling. Multiply all my millions, now me and my people winning. Moving city to city, I promise that you will see me driving a Lamborghini, but this is just the beginning. $1 million Bugatti, I'm stacking money in the ceiling.
The Truth Podcast, live from the grill in San Mateo. You got the General here, we got Big John, we got Winston, and we got the Nikki G here. What's up, guys?
Yes, sir. What's going on?
What up?
Hey, I'm excited, guys. I'm excited. We got John back from the dead here, dude.
Yeah.
He's coming out strong, dude. I was worried I was going to go give him whatever. I was going to give him the Trump juice if I had to, you know.
What do we got today?
So I'm going to tell you something. Today's awesome. Today is the value of experience and wisdom and why it's truly important to seek people with both to better your life, right?
Gotcha.
Let's start off with the definition that I like, right? That I found of experience, right? So I'll read this for you real quick. Practical knowledge, skill, or practice derived from direct observation or of participation in events in a particular activity, right? The Gen spit on this, my spin adding that is what is the measurable, and was it successful, and was the activity successful, right, with experience? Because you could experience bullshit, you got a lot of experience in bullshit, what's that going to do for us, right?
Yeah.
And good and bad experiences can lead us to bad choices. And that's where we're going to start off in this whole thing and talk about life, right? And so I want to talk about one of the craziest shit that happened to me and Carson, right? I got to share this one because this is just funny as shit. We Airbnb'd. We had this Airbnb guy. He comes in, and you would think that this is just like cold cut and clean, right? And he comes in, he rents, and it's a complete clusterfuck, right? But from that experience, you ask yourself, right, what could I have done better? What do you put in there? What do you get? But what I was thinking about this is how many situations in life are we throwing curveballs and we wonder if we have the experience to deal with it, or what should we do, or how should we go about it, right?
Mhm.
And depending on the level of person you are or where you're at in life, really dictates that. And so I want to really touch on that from a real strong perspective, right? If you're in the beginning of your 20s, you should really be seeking out people that have a lot of experience in whatever you're trying to achieve, right? So that you're not wasting all this fucking time trying to figure it out. Then you wake up and you're 30 years old and you just were a complete clusterfuck for 30 years old, right?
Yep.
And I think that that's the one thing where people get that experience portion, that understand that experience, you want to get as much experience as you can quickly, right? Quickly. And you're like, oh, how can I do that? So I put a post today on Instagram. Nikki G, I want you to read this. Can you read that post for me real quick?
Absolutely. I'm going to go straight from your page. So on the post, which I'm sure it's going to show up shortly, it says, "Wise is the man who learns from others' mistakes or his good fortune." And that's a quote by Jim. And then it says, "The value of experience and wisdom is priceless."
Priceless, right? Because let's think about this. I'm gonna share something. You look at people in the housing market, or you're seeing what's going on today, right? We're sitting here talking about, oh, well, should I build a neighborhood? And you're thinking, well, shit, if I have the money, I jump in and start building a neighborhood, because we think that there's this bubble. And this is where experience takes place, and saying, in empirical data, how many times have I been here? How many times have I been successful at it? And how many times have I seen someone else be successful at it? Or how many times have I seen someone fail? That's where the double-edged sword is. And that's where you got to figure out is which side of the blade are you going to be on, right? So what I want to do is take a little moment here, and for you guys, for the listeners, kind of sharing an experience of where you think that you wouldn't have enough experience to make the decision, but you went ahead and did it. What was the result? And then where you did have the experience and you applied that experience, what was the result? Who wants to go off?
I'm going to let Carson go.
And it didn't go off, you said?
Yeah, and it didn't go well. And then you might have not had anyone that didn't go off. I mean,
Yeah, and that's vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
so I said, find an experience that where you've entered, say anything, and you had lack of experience in that subset. What did it turn out to be? What did you learn from it, or was it a complete clusterfuck?
Yeah, yeah.
And then another experience is you went into something with a lot of experience, or someone coaching you, right? Because that's it's basically a hand's
I
length
get
of
you.
experience.
I get you.
And then how did it turn out?
Sure.
Something that really steps out.
Sure. There's a few things that come to mind, and every answer, of course, is going to be different for everyone. But one thing where I didn't have a lot of experience is in the corporation I used to work for at Fidelity. I had to roll out this new system, and I got no training on it. So versus another example to where now in real estate, where I have a good mentor and someone guiding me through things, and I look at those two, right? One took way longer, more stressful. I had more anxiety on it, wasn't getting sleep. I couldn't teach others well. I had to teach myself, right? And I had to roll this system out versus where I had a resource to go to for someone to teach me things. So long story short, on one end, with no experience and no help, you kind of had to fail as you went and learn as you failed. And on the other experience, there was a ton of time that was saved because I had someone coaching me through each single thing. So there was no fail in that realm. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
So that's a long story short in terms of an experience where I went through something and didn't have someone guiding me through it. And they were like, okay, here's this piece of whatever, try to build this. And I was like, okay, well, it's going to take you a lot longer. You're going to fail over and over and over until you finally get it right. Versus when you have a guide who's telling you, okay, you're going to go here, 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 and here, and then you're complete. That's what it was.
Go for it, Nikki.
No, I went through my mind and I thought about different scenarios and situations. In like corporate world, I was super blessed by the proper people that guided me. And I think that's why I catapulted in my career the way I did. I looked out. But when I really think about back in like the sports days, that's where I really saw stuff in. Because when I first started boxing, I didn't get taught counter fighting and stuff. So pretty much the first 2 years of boxing, I was trading punches. It got crazy. And then when I went to train for Alavato, it was a whole different animal. It was like it was taught in the proper form. And I catapulted as a fighter in 2 years. Like the amount I learned in 2 years, I learned in 6 months, and I got really chiseled and I didn't get hit as much. And it's so fundamental. Then I take 2 coaches, the same sport, but the outcome was so different, you know? And I guess it's all also how good of I was a student with my first coach. I was so stubborn. I was just angry, a kid wanting to just, you know, fight. And then when I got to the other coach, I was more in the proper mindset. So a lot of it I feel is also the coach, but also my receptiveness as a student.
I think what happened? You're getting your ass kicked so much that you weren't receptive, right? You know, I think that's what really happened. And you come in a second. But, you know, this is the kind of this is a good example, right? Is what you don't want to get to in life. And I'm not going to use you as an example, but I'm saying you don't want to get your ass kicked so many times, so many experiences that you're like, now I'm open to what the real world is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to that piece of wise is the man who learns from someone else's mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or their successes. And I think that when you sit back, you don't actually have to experience things. You can actually experience things through people that achieved it because they're going to give you. And Carson just gave that tangible piece of the real estate versus rolling it out of Fidelity. This is exactly what I was been talking about. This is what we talked about in the Truth Podcast since its exceptional state. This is why it's so important. You know, that whole cliche says, tell me the 5 people you hang out with, and I'm going to tell you what basically your outcome is, right? I'm going to chop that shit up. Or the other thing is why it's so important that the mentors that you have in your life or the people in life guiding you know that they have the experience. Because on the surface, it could be like the first boxing coach, and he's a boxing coach, but is he really pumping out any champs? Is he doing anything, right? So then you're fucking wasting your time, and you could potentially get hurt, right?
Exactly.
Same thing financially, right? I'm going to give you an example. A friend this morning calls me and says, look, I want to do this deal, and it's in the real estate world, but I'm a numbers person, right? And they're like, I need a loan, and if I do this loan, all I'm looking is for $395,000. I can pay it back, and they send me the contract. So I start reading through, and I find some holes. And the property that they're waiting to sell to get to this next level, just close the fucking deal, is I said that property value is not going to hold. Now I'm not at the level of fucking with the tools that Carson is, but if every single, just on Zillow alone, if every single house is like showing $200,000 difference, if you take the math and said, okay, I'm going to go half of that, I said, you're still $100,000 off.
Yeah. Well, the worst thing you want to do is be the biggest house in the neighborhood. That's, you know.
Right. But think about this, right? You have $100,000, but I'm saying these are 2 separate areas completely. Right? Yeah. So they're going to sell house A. They got $200,000 here, and they're going to take the money from here. That's going to equal the number to pay for house B. Mm-hmm. But house A ain't fucking going to sell for the price that's there.
That they're
the value's
the
not around it. I don't give a shit. There's no.
So then you're losing.
You're losing.
Yep.
But now you set yourself for fail. And I said, well, where are you at on this deal? And they're like, well, you know what? It's a bank-owned deal. The money's got to be there Friday, and it's got to be fast. And I'm like, that run and gun shit will get you screwed every single time. Due diligence and moving slowly and methodically and thinking through everything is always going to be the safer bet than just, I'm going to run and gun this. I feel this and I want to do it. And that's the difference between this is what the difference between as being a human and an animal. Now I'm going to walk you through a real true scenario of these 2 things, right? So we got our frontal lobe, then we got our rear lobe. And so you think about this, when we do something as humans, we can actually sit down and feel and run a scenario in our head and kind of think, what could be the outcome? Right? We can sit there and say, okay, you know what? That chick's hot. If I decide to go and give her the sweet love without a condom, what's the consequence? It can kind of come to that, right? Or I see a stack of cash, I'm going to take it, whatever. You can actually run that. An animal is instinctual. An animal, for example, say there's a pack of dogs, and one of the dog crosses the road and gets killed. The other dogs will have that instant thought and say, well, not a thought, that experiences, and they probably won't do it. When they see the road, they'll start to hold back, right? And so that's part of experience. Even animals have that experience, but they can't cognitively think the thought of future. It's only present. And they're very reactive. When we don't mature our minds and we don't read and we don't have experience and we don't have this, we tend to become very reactive. And it's, I want this house now. And no matter what it is, and you get there and it's like, okay, well, I'm already stretched over the $100,000,
Yeah.
but now I need a fucking roof. And that's why the bank doesn't can't put the loan on it.
Yeah.
And you need a roof and you this. You don't have the money to make the move.
Yeah. It's kind of like the discussion we had yesterday, or not yesterday, last week. We were talking about when I was launching Titan, remember?
Yep.
And I had to make sure that I had everything to actually run the business. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, here we go, let's start going. It's like, okay, signage cost, yearly dues, MLS dues, the lockbox dues, all of this stuff that we have to pay out of pocket, right? And I had to make sure that I had that reserve before making the jump with our rule 3 times over.
Yep.
So when I did that, COVID hit, we had shutdown, we couldn't show houses, and it didn't bother me because I was well prepared for that. Versus someone who would have done that, spent all that money, not had anything to sell or to show clients to buy a house, then they would have been in the hole, living on credit.
Yeah, and the scary part is most people's mentality is like, we're going to be all right.
No,
Who the fuck are you? Where's that? The world doesn't know you're living. Right? That's crazy.
not at all. Not
mentality.
at all. Yeah.
And so I think that at the end of the day is that's what I'm talking about, that instinctual.
Mhm.
And you start to actually prepare yourself to make the proper decisions.
Mhm.
And that's when you start to come to experience, right? That is the biggest thing that I'm talking about is those experiences are going to get you to the next thing we're going to talk about towards the middle of the podcast.
Yeah. And it's 100% true. I can attest to that because I know everyone's probably guilty of it, but at a young age, we would all get that instinct, right? Like if your parents said no and you're like, oh, I don't care, I'm going to go do this. And then it's like, okay, then you get in trouble. Then you start to learn on a small scale. And it's like, how much times did things have to be put in front of you for you to actually see the meaning of why it's happening? You know?
Because the lessons actually come over and over, just bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And
Until
so-
it gets so bad where there's no coming back.
Yeah.
you
Well, it's
know?
a consequence, right?
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
consequence, right? And let's think about this. I'm glad you brought this up, right? Let's think about our judicial system, right? And why the difference between premeditated murder and then some instant murder, and why one carries such a heavy case behind it, right? Or a time period. So you're in a situation, right? And so what our judicial system is basically saying is that we can have this thought process and say, if we decide to do this, this is what the outcome is. And we then are going to end up in that situation.
Right.
But imagine if you're uneducated and you don't know shit, can you technically really do that? No. You're going to set up to fail, right? Because you're
Yeah.
thinking, I can do whatever I want,
Exactly.
and I want to get a slap in the hand. You know, some people don't even know what the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor and a petty misdemeanor. They don't even know what the hell that means, right?
Nope.
So you're not even working with the basis of experience. So then, Nikki, what it brings me to mind is you start to do stupid shit, like steal the candy at the candy store, and then you start doing bigger and bigger things. The consequences get bigger.
Mhm.
We can call it experience, but it's the experience of the consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And there's multiple levels of experience. And that's what we got to understand as human is, what do we want the end result to look like
Yeah.
from that experience? Because I can experience all kinds of shit,
Yeah.
but what is going to be the end result? Right? That's so huge, and that most of us out there are fucking failing today, especially in Carson's generation. Right?
Mhm.
They want an instant experience that they're seeing on social media. And it's like, I experienced this. No, you didn't. You visualized it. You did not experience it, because I just read you the definition
Yeah.
of what experience is.
Yeah, I mean, but you look, you make the connection to the justice system. I mean, California is toying with the idea of changing adulthood to like the age of 25. You know, because if you look at because you look at brain chemistry and your brain doesn't fully develop till the age
Yeah.
of 25. So here you have, you're sending 18-year-olds to prison for the rest of their life
Mhm.
when their body is an adult, but their brain isn't an adult.
I'm 100% that. So I'm gonna give you an example.
Yeah.
You cannot get into Delta Force till you're 25 years old.
Maybe the rental cars had it
The
right.
rental car. Yeah.
The
Come on,
rental car
man. I'm
industry
like,
had it right.
I can't. Well, no, I can rent one. I just have to pay a fee.
I know. But that's what I'm saying is they look at it as it's all about numbers for
Yeah.
them, you know. So okay, we're probably less accidents from 18 to 25.
Yeah.
The 25-year-old has fewer
Sure.
accidents. So they want to protect their investment.
Yeah.
So they just changed that, right? Because there was a time period where if you weren't 25, you couldn't rent it, right?
They must have, because I rented a car last year and I
Yeah.
just had to pay like a extra $100.
Because I remember there was a time when me and you went where you couldn't rent the car zero. There wasn't the option.
It was like $800 taken
Deposit.
off of your card.
Oh,
It's
really?
like
They
you
hold
card.
more to probably, yeah, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was able to rent one because I was skeptical. I was like, I need a rental, but I'm going to try it. Worst case, I have a plan B here. But it worked. So I was like, oh,
but
sick.
still, that all ties into even what
Yeah.
the whole point of this conversation is: experience and wisdom. You know,
Sure.
and that's that's what's so hard, especially me as a teacher. You have these kids that have adult bodies,
Yeah.
but they still have adolescent brains.
Mhm.
You know, and that's why I'm so against parents rushing their kids into life. You know,
Sure.
they're so anxious, and a lot of it's because of financial reasons. You know, daycare is expensive,
Right.
preschool's expensive, and they want to put their kid into school. Well, now they don't see that in the future. Now I have a 17-year-old that's going to go off and have to maybe go to school or go into the military or go into
Mhm.
the workforce. Versus they have the potential to be 19.
Sure.
So there is a fluctuation, and a lot of parents don't have that foresight to say, I want my kid to be a kid as long as possible,
Yeah, I get that. And the reason I kind of chuckled with it is because I'll play devil's advocate on this conversation. Is I personally think if something were to happen like that, that's an excuse for a kid to be lazy and start his life a lot further down the line. Like me, when I took my nephew in under my wing, I was like, no, I know someone who will hire you. You're going to go work and COVID and all this stuff. And I said, they are taking precautions. And here's what we're going to do. The kid has like $6,000 in his bank account that he's just saving up. And he's like 16 years old. And it's like, even his bosses, my mom told him the other day, because he's like, no, I can't go and buy this. And she's like, the hell with you. You're going to go buy this because you probably have more money than me, So that's the only thing that I kind of am dancing with on that discussion is I'm like, well, I see a lot of kids. And that's what we're seeing now, even happening before that occurred, is we're seeing kids who are staying home longer than ever before in history, So that's the only danger zone I see of it.
So I'm
happening.
gonna apply the sauce. Okay, you got the advocacy. I'm gonna apply the sauce, and both of what I think you guys. So I think it makes sense. So let's give an example, right? Like, so I'm gonna use Cameron Cervantes, who's just fucking killing it. And you look at him, and he's at UNM, and he's cracking a 4.0 in engineering school, and he's living at home. He's not out there living in the dorms and stuff, but like it's funny because they've done very well. And he has kind of like a suite laid on top of the second story of their house. They got a badass house, right? But he's like, why am I going to go out there and try to get in the dorms in a shitty ass place when I live basically in a freaking mini mansion? Right?
Mhm.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you do that? But you look at that, and so, but he's being taught the fundamentals of working hard. He knows how to work his ass off. So we went up to Penasco, we put in doors. He knows how to use tools. So like William just pounds him to the ground in the fundamentals of life. The guy's super clean. He knows how to clean after, doesn't run his mouth. I mean, he's the same thing like Aiden. He's got $40,000 saved. Obviously, he's had a jump start of good decisions on his dad's part, but he's way ahead of life. Further than none of us could have been there because we didn't have that much of an intellect, William's just freaking kicking ass. So when I think about that, as I think, don't jump out there and try to force them to jump out of life as an adults, but practice to be a champion.
Mm-hmm.
All those fundamental skills, like you don't get there and you're fucking kicking back and not doing shit. Like, I don't want to grow up. Well, neither do I. I want to be a Toys R Us kid my whole life. But it's not going to work for me, right?
Yeah.
And so I think
Exactly.
ultimately you have to realize as a kid, you have to know yourself and say, what's going to be my mental aptitude? And we've talked about this, right? What's my capability? But what in life is really going to be what I personally want? Like what I want in life.
Yeah.
And that's going to help you start to forge those decisions.
Exactly.
You don't got that, you're screwed.
Yep.
You're not putting a plan down, right?
Nope. Then you're
Unfortunately,
going to
a
go
lot of
study
people
plants
are
for
like
4
that,
years.
I have a lot of conversations with people and they'll sit there and tell me what they don't want. And I'm like, well, what do you want? And they just have no idea. And it's just, I think at the end of the day, today's a brand new day. So like, if you are that person that doesn't exactly know, it's time to self-reflect. I feel like if during COVID, if you aren't achieving your dreams, you were the excuse, not the time or anything like that. Because a lot of people are at home now, they have all this time freedom, but yet they still have the same patterns, the same, exact layout of what they're doing. So there's no change. Growing up, I had a lot of, that's not what I don't want. I don't want that. So I got to experience my life of learning from other experiences without having to go through it, but knowing that that's not what I desire. And so if I would have went the other route, it would have been, that's all I know. And so that's why I followed that trend. So I'm super grateful that I always had that like yearning for life and yearning for more. But definitely I feel like that's the number one reason that no one gets what they want, because they don't even know what they clearly want.
Well, I think the other thing is like Uniki is that you're observing the results. And that's what I'm talking about. When you're looking at experience, you have to observe the results and really understand what they are. In your situation, the results fucking sucked. It's a shit show. And you're like, I'm going to do opposite of where I'm being raised in my environment, basically, and what I'm seeing. And so that's what I'm talking about. But you still could have said, oh, no, this is a good way. I feels good. I'm going to be here falling apart, whatever. It feels comfortable, whatever. And that's what I'm talking about is not understanding that. And we've all been there, right? It's like in my community. I saw guys growing up and they're smoking the weed, the pot all day long and, drinking beer and they're fucking off. And I'm looking at the results and I'm sitting there and I'm seeing guys that are 5-7 years than me and they're on the street corner hanging out with their buddies, talking war stories of high school. And that's not the fucking result that I want. You know what I'm trying to talk about? Absolutely. And this is what I want to touch because before I forget this. And think about this. If we know that our brains don't develop till 25, and I've seen all the scientific studies, I'm glad you brought that up, John. Well, imagine if you're on there adding substances when your brain's not completely evolved, right? You're adding any type of substance whatsoever, alcohol, any type of mind-altering drugs and all, and your brain's not fully there. Think of this example, right? That's like getting a bone that is not developed and then implying a level of impact. That bone's going to break a lot faster because it's not as dense as it is, right? It's premature to whatever it is, right? So imagine that we're applying all that bullshit in our minds, and then did your brain really get to full growth at 25? Or did all that bullshit you did really gonna take you to fucking 28? Which sucks, right? Because you're really falling behind the curve, right? That's exactly what we're talking about. Like Nikki, you saw growing up a lot of alcoholism, stuff like that. And like, are you gonna follow in that path? No. You knew that fucking if you're drunk all night and you can't get up, you gotta sleep till 6 o'clock. You're seeing shit. You're fucking like the guy that rented for me, right? You look at those results and you're like, holy shit.
I mean, by the time I hit 21, I just didn't even care about a bar. I didn't actually go to a club or a bar till I was 23, and it's because I grew up around that. And so I just, it was just so bizarre. Like I feel like I was kind of robbed from I'm 21. It was more like, one, by the time you calculate the getting in, the amount of money, of the bar tab, the whole experience, I'm like, man, I could have done so much more. I just couldn't fathom spending money on alcohol when then at the end of the day, like it goes from like when someone starts drinking to finishing, it's just a disaster. It's just the slurriness, like it's just not a good experience. So when I turned 21, I was like, well, I'm going to plan a vacation. I'm going to buy an airplane ticket to experience something instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go hit up all these clubs. So I'm super grateful that I kind of had that experience, even though it wasn't the greatest, because I didn't have to go down that route, like I didn't have to.
I'm going to show a real life example, right? So, I used to hit the clubs hard about 10 years ago. I used to hit them hard. And I remember one time I'm going and Mikey's with me. We're sitting at Vintage one day and there's a group of guys and they're like, you know what, we're going to roll up the General. And so they're going to order. And he says, what are you going to order? And I remember it was towards Valentine's Day. And so they look on the menu, like, give me the cheapest thing on the menu. I think I'm just going to fucking use a burger and fries, right? And I'm sitting there and I look at this and I order, at the time it was like steak, shrimp, and a lobster tail. And they're like, oh my God. So I said, after it was all said and done, I said, check this out, Mike. And he's like, what's that, boss? He says, those guys actually thought that we were balling it and spending more than them, but let's run this mathematical figure. So we looked at the bar tab of the one individual, and he ran a bar tab when he was there, $350, right, for him and his buddies or whoever it was, right? And the other guy was at 180. My meal was $85. It was I think we ended up paying like $100 because it was the couple special. So, he benefited from the whole deal, right? And when I looked at that, he's looking at me like, you spent that money on food. And I'm looking at him like, you spent that money on alcohol? And so I ran it down for him, and I thought, you got no nutritional value from that shit. You actually introduced poison. So you paid triple the price for poison. And I paid a third of the price for greatness. Who's got fucked on that deal? Do you see what I'm trying to tell you?
Mhm.
That is at a very low level. That's looking at experience. So we walked away. Mike's like, I never thought about it that way. And I said, those guys are actually spending more money than I am because they're buying a substance that's just exploited 3,000%.
Yep.
Right? In a restaurant, the biggest money maker is a soft drink or the coffee. Right? Because what the cost of it is. That's the same thing with bars. That's what you're talking about. So when you take all that into play, what are you doing in life like that that's dumb?
Mhm.
Right? That's adding up and going to kick you in the ass.
Absolutely.
Those are the decisions. It pulls me into this next one. I want to read this for you guys, okay? Wisdom. And this is the definition. The ability to use your knowledge and experience to make good decisions and judgments. Okay? The Jen spinoff. And this is what I put with it. Wise is the man who learns from others' mistakes or good fortune. And this is what I'm trying to talk about, right? Look at what the third thing that is said. There's 4 things that are really, well, there's actually 5 things that are underlined, right? The ability, right, to use your knowledge and experience, good decisions, and the end is a judgment. Wisdom is so powerful, right? And so when you think about that, how powerful is that? And I want to share something with you. I'm going to share a story, and then I'm going to share something that I read. Okay, and you can see I'm going to wrap this up. So this is where experience and wisdom come in place. Everybody in a church ain't Christian. Everybody in jail is not a criminal, right? Everyone in your face is not your friend. I want you to deep this, right? The wisdom.
This is good.
But I'm going to read this to you, okay? And I'm going to talk about King Solomon, right? Out of biblical. I'm going to read this to you. So King Solomon prayed for the ultimate wisdom and actually into the world accomplished the most wealth, the biggest buildings, everything. They say if we take all the billionaires and put them together, it'll amount to King Solomon's wealth, right? So I'm going to read this for you. Bear with me. It's just good stuff. I'm going to touch back what I told you, right? King Solomon, greatest strength was his unsurpassed wisdom granted to him by God. So one biblical episode, 2 women came to him with a dispute. Both lived in the same house and had recently delivered newborns, but one of the infants had died. The mother of the dead baby tried to take the living child from the other mother. Because the other witness lived in the house, the women were left to dispute the living child and who it belonged to. So they both claimed that the child was theirs, right? They asked Solomon to determine which of the 2 should keep the newborn. With an astonishing wisdom, Solomon suggested that the boy be cut in half with his sword and split between the 2 women. Deeply moved by the love for her son, the first woman, whose baby was alive, said to the king, "Please, my lord, give the living baby and don't kill him." But the other woman said, "Neither nor shall have him cut him in 2." Solomon then ruled the first woman was the real mother because she preferred giving up her child than giving up to harm's way. King Solomon's skill in architecture and management turned Israel into the showplace of the Middle East. And as a diplomat, he made treaties and alliances that brought peace to the kingdom. His weakness, to satisfy his curious mind, Solomon turned to the worldly pleasures instead of the pursuit of God. He collected all sorts of treasures and surrounded himself with luxury. In the case of non-Jewish wives and concubines, Solomon allowed just to rule his heart instead of obedience to God. Apparently, he let the foreign wives worship native gods and even the altars he built in Jerusalem for them. Solomon taxed his subjects heavily and conscripted them to his army, and whoever then joined the army into slavery. Life lesson. King Solomon's sins speak loudly to us in our current day materialistic culture. We worship possessions and fame over God, and we are headed for a fall. When Christians marry an unbeliever, we also expect trouble. God ought to be our first love, and we should let nothing come before him. Now, I want to touch on this. Just even if you're not a Christian-based individual. Like-minded humans. If you are a saver, and then you choose a non-saver, well, in mathematics, what does that equal you, right? 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So the chances of you succeeding are giving yourself a 50% touch. When I read this, right, and I'm thinking about this, I mean, this is me. I got a lot of wisdom. You know, that was one of God's greatest gifts to me. And so we start to fill ourselves with a lot of bullshit, and we fall sight from what's important, right? People, our families, the basics of life, and all that. But when you surround yourself with like-minded people that have that experience, that share the same wisdom as you, it's going to help you stay on the right path, right? And just because someone's in front of you, remember I said a while ago, just because someone's in front of you doesn't mean he's your friend.
Yeah, of course.
Right? In anything. In a deal, you always have to look at that individual and ask yourself, is he making the decision, or is he trying to run and gun a fucking deal because of his benefit? Why is the deal so quick?
Right.
Why is someone doing that? What is there behind? Because, and that's where wisdom comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think Winston has seen where people get really angry at me because I just won't jump at anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've had a situation like that too, where an agent on the other side, he knew some stuff about this house that they weren't disclosing, and he was trying to push the contract. Didn't want to send extensions, didn't want to do this, and he was getting pissed at me because I'm like, well, we still need to get another inspection based on the first home inspection that says get a plumber out here, do this, do this, do this. He's like, no, the deadline's tomorrow. We're not extending. We need to sign this or terminate the deal, and we're keeping the deposit. And I was like, what? No, that's not how it's going to go down. And same thing. And that's just an example to say what you're saying goes with every single thing in life. And that was a run and gun deal. And it could have potentially been a shit show for my clients because there was so much unknown with that thing that he knew something, and that's why he was trying to just boom, 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 boom. And they was getting mad at me because I'm like, no, we're not going to move forward with this. You know, same situation.
Exactly. And I think the situation is that you need time to evaluate to see what the overall experience is going to be, right? Is it gonna be fucked up or not? And those things, like for me, one of my famous lines is, I move like a 70 to 80-year-old man, right? Because for me, I'm not going to make a mistake. You look at older people, and they don't make a decision to go, I'm going to invest this because they don't have the time to make it back, right? If you lose it. That has always shown me tremendous weight in success, is I do not jump into anything. I do not give a crap what anyone's telling me. And this is where people make very bad decisions, lack of wisdom, because they don't have experience. So how can you have wisdom without the experience unless it's divine, or you're not, you know, talking to 10,000 people that are in that subset, and they're saying, hey, if you do this, don't do this. Same thing like we talked about the coach. That's an example. So when you look at that, think about this. Here's that agent. He obviously knows that the plumbing's bad, and it's going to cost a shitload, and all he cares about is commission. But he doesn't even know that he's endangering his client from a major fucking lawsuit. And himself to a lawsuit. He just can't preclude himself. Like, I'm out of this whole deal. And he just gets taken to the thing. This is what I talk about, an instant deal. No bullshit. No way in hell. But watch, when you stop and you think about things, things become clear. On the deal, the situation, all this, I stop to think exactly what is my move. I never let emotion drive me to make a decision. I apply the wisdom and experience that I've had in my life before I do anything. And I kind of talked about the situation that we had with the condo, right?
Yeah.
You know, Carson calls me up. This guy's a bad guy. He's thrashing the pace. He's paraphernalia, all kinds of bullshit. I could have struck immediately in emotion, right? I have the ability, and it would have been disaster. But what did I do? I said, okay, I given myself a time limit. How much damage does this fucker do? Where are we at? And I said, okay, I'm going to give myself a total of 12 hours from the experience. But I did my due diligence because I know myself, right? I'm going to go in aggressive. I'm going to do this. So what do I got to do? I'm going to contact Airbnb. Airbnb is going to tell me, okay, sir, from that, go to stage 2. Okay, now we're going to get you to escalation number 3. But what am I thinking the whole time? How am I going to mitigate my risk? Why? I've been in plenty of lawsuits. I've been in plenty of situations. I've been in plenty of altercations. I've been in fucking war. You know, it all makes it together. It says, what am I going to do? So what I did is I started to apply all that wisdom and said, this is what I'm going to do. Now, if I know somebody's bad, am I going to alert them that I'm coming?
No.
I don't know. Fuck no. I'm going to surprise the shit out of you, right? And when I walked in and surprised the shit out of him, and Carson's there, right? And he's crazy because he comes up basically with his hands up and he says, he does this kind of maneuver. And he's like, oh, I said, get the fuck out. He knew. But what he knew was this. When he saw me walk up there in a bulletproof vest and a black bag, he's like, this guy's not going to fuck around. The situation in life is it's all about wisdom and preparation. It's never about being a badass or, no, I got the money, I can do it. Because I'm telling you right now, people that make right decisions and use their wisdom is why they have what they have or what they've achieved. It ain't because it was a run and gun.
Exactly.
Right?
Moving with strategy and not emotion.
Always strategy. And what all strategy is experience with wisdom to be able to create a plan. And that's what's right here. And so what I think when people get away from what I just read to you, right, is when people go to shit and they don't understand the definition of experience and understand the definition of wisdom. If you achieve that, that value is immeasurable, right? Let me tell you another example. If you own a business, let me run this. Early on in my life, I was very successful. I've been very successful. I've been very blessed. I would just go out and just drop a loaf on a car, right? $450,000 and say, okay, forget it. I got the title. But what I didn't know, I'm going to run this mathematical figure for you. If you're a business, let's run this, right? So in order for me to get $600,000 out liquid, like in a liquid brick, that means that I would have had to generate $1 million. So after paying state tax, right, my income tax, federal tax, I get $600,000.
Wow. From
$1 million. Okay. Now let me run this mathematical figure for you. So in order for me to buy that asset, I had to get $1 million and liquidate it. Not a smart thing. But this is where you use your knowledge and experience from others and you say, well, what's a tax law? Now watch this. That same deal, if you do what they call a capital closed lease or even an open lease, right? That same dollar figure now is going to be cast over a period, but only half the asset is going to show the value. That's why they have that what they call the cap rate. They're saying after this period, that's what this is going to be. This is going to be worth. So if I'd have gone that way, every payment that I made, and you negotiate this, you're not going to get your ass kicked, right? Would have been 100% tax write-off. Okay? So run this math with me. Let's say for a year that I said, you know what? Once the business encumbers the debt, it can take the entire debt in 1 year. So say the cap rate would have been 60%. That means that I'm going to be able to write off $350,000 immediately because the business has the write-off. So I encumber the $350,000. I take it, right? Guess what? That I took $350,000 tax-free without paying income tax or state tax. Think about that. I'm at $650,000. I got the asset I want, and I still have $650,000 in the company. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
One of the first things that I remember hearing, and I actually heard it from Winston, it was crazy, and I actually enlightened me. And he made a comment. He says, "You know what? I learned a lot of shit from Jay-Z and his music." And I'm like, "This fucking kid's nuts, right?" So there's a lyric that he puts in there, and he says, instead of buying, and I'm gonna chop this shit up because I'm not gonna exact, but he says, "I bought all the latest V12s, but what I should have done is buy a building." And when you think about that, right? Let's think about this in that time period, because money is just worth money. So $1 million that you owned 20 years ago, if it's just not doing shit, isn't worth $1 million anymore. Because you're talking about the inflation cost. So what you could buy 10, 20 years ago with $1 million, you can't buy today, unless something just crashes to shit. And I'm gonna run this by you guys. So just bear with me.
Yeah,
real
of
quick.
course.
So if you'd have taken that $1 million instead of buying 2 V12s, and he would have bought a building, right? And he would have found a renter, and say that building for $1 million, it's going to pull you about $10,000 worth of rent. It's always, any asset's going to pull you about 10% of what your capital expense was. You know what I'm trying to say? I always plays the mathematics like that. And you always say, you know what, 22% of that, 20% of that's going to be for maintenance and all that. That's how you figure out your capex. So if you'd have run that mathematical figure, right, started a business and then leased the V12s, that building would have paid the V12s. Now he has an asset that's always appreciating and paying that asset. He walks away. He had the experience.
Yeah.
When that asset depreciated to that point, he could have sold it off. He would have had no net loss. All the experience, no net loss. Sounds a little complicated, right?
But if it appreciated, he could have sold it and made money off the
But if
asset
you
too.
appreciate it. But do you see how you're covering both angles? This is what I'm talking about. This is the experience that I'm talking about. And so you have to understand, this is why it's so important for you to educate yourself in everything that you're going to do so that you can be successful at it
Right.
and maximize your success. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if I go back in time, and me and Dave Wolf were talking about this yesterday, and we allowed the so-called brainiacs from Edward Jones to not buy strictly Apple and Amazon at the time. And I wanted to do $1 million acquisition. And we had more than that in the 401k. And he says, "Oh, no, we're going to do this." And where we're at, do we make money? Yes. Is it safe? Yes. If I would have invested the $1 million, like I said, today, we'd be at $89 million. What gives them the experience? It doesn't give them fucking shit. They're not millionaires. And I went against my own code. I used to tell bankers, how can you advise a millionaire when you're not a millionaire? Do you see what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
So you find people of the experience, and this is why environments like New York, or why it's so important that belong to these country clubs, is because what you're doing is you're brain sharing with brilliant people. I was up in Rio Doso, at the country club. We bought a piece of property out there. And I'm sitting with these two oil tycoons. I mean, these guys are known, right? They own ranches, their brothers, they're killing. He says, "You know what? You guys better start looking into buying these 2 stocks." I came back on Monday morning and I doubled down and I bought the 2 stocks. Today, I'm 69% up from the original value.
Wow.
Experience and knowledge. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But if you're hanging around to a bunch of dumbasses that don't have your interest in there, and they're saying they're your friends, they're misadvising you.
Yeah.
And now you're like, you know what? My life sucks. Everyone you're sitting with in church doesn't mean that they're Christian. They could just be going to the polls, because let me tell you something. Pastor Todd said a statistic. Waiters and waitresses said that the worst people that they wait of all days of the week is on Sunday, 3 o'clock and above, or I was like 1 o'clock and above, when everyone's getting out of church.
That's crazy.
And you
It's
know
a true
what? They're the
statement.
worst tippers and the worst. What the fuck is going on there?
Yeah. I've lived through that.
John laughs.
Maybe those people are the worst people in our society.
Let me tell you something. You know why? Because their ears ain't open.
Mhm.
Right? Their ears ain't open.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm talking about.
Pharisees. right word.
Yeah, it's and so what I'm saying is that, and then you get these. I feel sorry as a guy out there, and I feel really bad because he tells me one day, I was raised by a so-called Christian family. They're beating the fucking brakes out of me, and this and that. And I'm like, that's not a Christian family. That's a fucking title, dude. That's like saying, you know what? I'm raised freely, but I had a Nazi symbol. You have to understand this, right? And so then those individuals are like, well, Christians are bad then. I'm going to get away because my experience was so shitty.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it is. You had a bunch of dumbass people, right? And this is another example I like to use. If your favorite food is fried chicken and you eat that every day, you love it, like me. I love fried chicken, right? And you get food poisoning one time from it because someone miscooked it. Are you going to just say fucking all fried chicken's bad? I'm never going to eat it again?
No.
No.
You may have a bad taste for a while with it, though.
But you know what? You're going to come right
You're
back.
gonna go
'Cause
back to it.
I'm talking from experience. But my logical mind and experience said, no, it wasn't the chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I should have realized when I saw them and it was sitting out and I ate it and it was cold, that's a bad choice on my department.
Yeah.
Did you see what I'm trying to tell you?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I'm trying to get you guys to open your mind and all the listeners is don't let experiences forge your fucking future.
Yeah.
Because if the
For
people
sure.
that you were with giving you the bad experiences are going to divert you from making a good experience, that's fucking stupid. It's a double whammy.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm trying to tell you?
True.
So just because, and I got to do this, just because you were married once and you chose the wrong wife, and you're like, well, I'm not going to get married again. And then you're all pissed off, but you're that kind of guy or that kind of gal, and that's what you crave in your life. No, you chose the wrong person.
You could be missing out on a big opportunity.
Yeah, you're missing on the opportunity you want to be. So be who you want to be. Don't let the experience forge you.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm talking with business. But people that are in my life, they're always trying to run and gun me. But I only had one experience like that. It's called my partner. It was a 7-figure buyout. But that was enough experience for me that I don't move fast.
Yeah.
Right? You can't get me to move fast.
Mm-hmm.
I got to look at it. I got to think about it. I got to pray about it. I got to drink coffee. I got to look at it. Because you know what? My famous fucking line to people is this. I don't even know if I'm interested in making any more money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to maintain the one I got.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you got 30 chickens and you always have a chicken dinner and you always have eggs, why are you fucking worried about getting 100 chickens if you can't barely manage the 20 that you got?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a resource. And the moment that you stop to understand, and I always talk about this, money's a resource. The experience you have is a value. You'll never understand the value of your resource if you're run a bunch of bullshit. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's how you talk about people like they're billionaires and they're sad, and I can't figure it out because I'm like, fuck, I don't want to be sad, man. I'm confused, right? But I can't talk because I have a lot of good people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just sitting here right now. Look at this. I got good people sitting with me in the podcast. If we're stuck on an island, we're gonna be entertained the whole fucking time. We're gonna pull our weight.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. Is that's where you get, and we're hitting this ball over and over and over again, like-minded people.
Right.
People
Absolutely.
that are gonna enlighten you. People that are gonna get you back into the fucking Christmas spirit. Fucking wisdom. I laugh at this, right? I hadn't set up my tree. This is years back. But I hadn't set up my tree. I hadn't set up the lights. And I was like, fuck it. And Winston comes along. He's like, you haven't set up a tree? And I said, no. And he's like, well, let's set your shit up. And we set it up. And I thought about this, and I'm like, man, I love setting up the tree. I loved all this shit. But why did I do it? Couple bad experiences. So I let those experiences stop me from going to what I love.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm trying to tell you? But when you're around people that are good and a good experience, then you're not there. You see what I'm trying to tell you?
Absolutely.
So this is really the subset of where experience and wisdom comes. And it all turns it back to what John was saying. So it's not about saying, you know what, grow up fast. Gain experience before you make big decisions.
Yeah.
That's what the grow up fast is. But people get all fucked up and want to use a bunch of excuses. That's how we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the people going to church being the mean motherfucker. No matter me. My famous line is, I'll punch you out if you're a Christian or you're a drug dealer. I'm going to punch you out the same way. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So what we're saying and learn to this whole thing, and so you can live a good life, get those experiences. Someone gives you an opportunity to learn how to fucking dig a ditch, take it. Someone teaches you something that you see like, holy shit, their outcome is good. Take all that experience before you go and make a decision, right? It's like Nikki, when you said, you know what, man, I just jump out there and start developing. No, it sounds funny, but imagine if you had the money, you came in and you went and made that move right now, and you have a clusterfuck, and we come to a stop, and the market goes to shit, and now the interest rates go to 4 to try to balance it. You won't sell shit. Now you lost every single dollar.
Yep.
You see what I'm trying to tell you?
Absolutely.
It looks good. I'm looking at it from the outside. You're there like, oh, you know what? That looks good. No, it's not a good deal.
Yeah.
You do not make big decisions if you don't have experience, or surround yourself with the people that have experience, and then know they're going to say, okay, for my experience, it's going to cost you this, but I'm willing to put this in.
Mhm.
You know, skin in the game. It goes back to the little red hen.
Mhm.
You see what I'm trying to say? And so it's just those basics. And that's why it's so important. Experience and wisdom before you make any large decisions. And you can't measure it. You can't measure it, right?
Mhm.
I knew when my brother what not to do, not land me up in jail, right? I have a lot of good experience. You know, thank you. I knew what bad decisions, like with the situation with his wife, you know, stuff with his daughters. And so I was like, fuck, it's not what I want to do. I'm not going to jump in there and just because the girl looks hot, I'm going to go in there and all of a sudden she's pregnant and now I'm an instant dad. You know what I'm trying to say? I don't want to swim upstream. Those are the things that I'm telling you. You don't want to swim upstream. So you got to make those decisions that are not going to fuck you, right? Ultimately. And there's an old rule, someone who told me this, but it says, look, don't mess with people that don't have as much as you to lose. And that's not a monetary thing. So I'll give you an example. John's a teacher. I'm a CEO. John doesn't want to lose his teaching license. I don't want to lose my position. So the chances of me and him doing something fucking stupid, probably not, because we're not going to take the risk. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Mhm.
But somebody would spin in and say, well, John's a teacher and you're a CEO. How is that? No, we're like-minded. We have just as much to lose at the same level.
Yeah.
You see what I'm trying to tell you?
Right.
And being you go do a real estate deal, you have your license to lose. So you're not going to do something stupid because your ass is on the line.
Exactly.
You have a fiduciary responsibility to the public. That's why you're a licensed official to the state of New Mexico.
Mhm.
You see what I'm trying to say? But if some dumbass comes in, he's like, I'm going to do this run and gun. No, I'm not going to do that deal. You see what I'm trying to tell you, Nikki?
Absolutely.
And this is why a lot of people get sold. Who's ever watched Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo
Oh, yeah.
DiCaprio?
I haven't seen
Based on a true story. He
Yeah.
bullshitted to become a doctor, fucking ran a hospital ER. He bullshitted as an attorney, was an assistant prosecutor in Louisiana, right? And then he bullshitted that he was a pilot, a Pan Am pilot, and he literally forged and cashed over $6 million in checks in the early 70s.
Jeez.
And turned out to come out, he was caught. He made friends with the actual agent that caught him. He went to work for the FBI, right? Not serve out his time. He was 17 years old at this time, 17 to 18 years old. And at the end of the day, now he consults for the top firms in New York on how to create these checks and makes millions of dollars.
Dang, that's crazy.
Right?
I need to watch that.
I know.
It's a must.
Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio.
It is a
Yeah.
must
Catch Me If You
watch.
Can.
It is a must watch.
What's it on? Is it
Uh,
on anything streaming or no?
Xfinity? No,
I'll have
it
to
is.
check
No,
it
it's a streaming one because Xfinity sent me to some new little streaming app. I can't remember what it's called.
I'll have to check
Limbo,
it
I
out.
think.
I'll send you a link.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is this, right? So when you're sitting there and I'm saying this is what we're going to do, you start to get people with that experience, right? Now he had bad experiences. He said, you know what? I'm going to take these experiences. I'm going to turn them good.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So when you watch that movie, if you've had bad experiences, been an abused person, you could take those experiences and become the greatest counselor. And how many people could you help? If you were in massive fucking debt, you made all these bad decisions and got yourself in trouble, well, you could be in a counselor to advise people on credit card debt. Now, why not to do this? Do you see what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
So from any angle you can turn to good, it's all what your choice is going to be.
So what I'm getting definitely from this, because I want to take this into like my own personal experiences, is you really have to have that end goal. So that way you're kind of in that realm of choices of your experiences and the wisdom. Because I feel like if someone just kind of went off blindfolded, they could just be walking in the wrong direction with the wrong experiences. I think corely knowing what you want in that end direction is so important. And from that moment on is how you strategically move in that direction.
And I'm going to define it for you better, right? Let's think about this. You're in the grocery store, right? And your goal is to bake cornbread. Would you be in the frozen section aisle getting the frozen section experience? Or would you be in the liquor department getting the liquor department experience? No. So the end goal, as you're going into the department store, you see baking products that already defines you closer to where you're at.
Yep.
So you know that you're going to bake
good.
bread. You see the sign. You now narrowed from this large store to go there. Now you get to that section and you're fucking a little confused. And the individual on his badge says liquor department. Are you going to ask him how to bake the fucking cornbread? How many times do people do this? All the time. No, not me. I'm going to go to the liquor guy and say, can you get me the guy or gal from the baking department? Then the girl from the baking department is going to come and I'm going to say, you know what? Have you made the best cornbread? And I'm going to tell you it's weird because you keep on probing the universe. She's going to be saying, you know what? I make the best southern cornbread you've ever had, son. This happened to me, actually. And then she's going to give you the fucking recipe. And then you're going to look at me. I'm going to reiterate 5 times. And man, this is how you do it? Oh, absolutely. And let me ask you a further question. What ingredients do you use? Oh, no, never use these ones. Use these ones. And this is why. And then she'll tell you, know what? Well, in Louisiana, because we're at altitude, this was this, but you got to do this. Now you fucking got a master to tell you from experience and wisdom how to do it. So look what you just did. You just achieved instant experience and instant wisdom because you asked the right question. So it's about knowing where you're going and asking the right question and be able to identify, are you in the right place? That's what the takeaway is.
That's so good. That's so good.
Well said.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah, I love it.
Huh?
That was good. What else we got?
That's all I got for you folks.
No, that one was good.
That was
Let's
really
see what do you want from me, you know what I mean? No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
John, what is it? You like in major thought, man. John's freaking me out here.
No, I mean, I can look at, say, the last 26 years and my coaching experience and how now it's come to sort of a head because now my son's benefiting the most from it, you know, and I think about the things that how little I knew at the beginning, how little wisdom and little experience, but as I continually and surrounded myself with good people, but then also surrounded myself with, ended up learning from negative things,
Yes.
you know, and learning from those lumps and learning from being around the wrong persons. And then also just how subtle diversions and put you on different paths. You know, I can remember a point when I was at Albuquerque High and I didn't get the head coaching job. You know, I failed at that. You know, they gave it to a guy with less experience and it ended up being a disaster. But it ended up putting me on a different path that allowed me to coach my kids.
Think about that.
Oh, no, yeah, because and had I not done that, I probably would have never coached my kids and their outcome would be completely different right now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's crazy how this little subtle butterfly effect in our lives,
how things pan out, right?
how quickly they change, you know. So, you know, and there's a lot of things that have happened, and it's all revolves around mainly with my coaching, but little subtle things. And at the time you think, oh man, it hurts so bad because it didn't go this way. But then you look at the long view and you're like, well, that worked out way better.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
And I'm going to tell you something. Like you look at that, John, and you look at that, that's really where I call divine intervention. Where you sit there and you're like, okay, I've done all the right things. I'm here. And it's this. And this is, I think I shared this story very early on our podcast, right? And this is an example I'm going to give you. When me and my cousin were young, we worked in Los Alamos, and his dad was pretty high up in Los Alamos, and my dad was doing very well. But my cousin, they had one room at JB Henderson to do construction, and I ended up at I forgot the name of the firm right now, but I ended up at this laboratory one, right? And so they're kicking the shit out of me, and I'm watching my cousin through the fence, and he's got an hour and a half of volleyball for lunch, and I got 20 minutes, and I'm getting the shit beat out of me. In that moment, I'm asking God, why the fuck does he always get the good shit? And I'm over here getting fucked every single time. And I'm pissed off as shit, dude. I'm pissed off. I'm running the jackhammer. I'm mad as shit. I'm having to put a plastic in my Camaro, and I wore this white suit because I was so dusty that I didn't want to fuck my car up, so I'm driving. Years later, when I look at that, right, and I sit here today, little did I know that experience was the fucking greatest experience for me. Because what it taught me is that is not the life that I want. And so it forced me to say, I'm going to work so hard in school to become an engineer and do this shit to get in the lab so I could get across the fence and be making a lot of money and playing volleyball at lunch. You see what I'm trying to tell you? And that's when you said that to me, you talked about your experience. That was my experience right there. Right? And here I am. Do I want to be, not against any Henderson, great company, but would I want to be a project manager at Henderson or what else? No. But I was being forged for something better. And that's what I'm talking about, right? And this is where I think faith, and this is coming from my perspective. I'm going to give it from my perspective. You out there listening, you have your own belief system. I don't give a shit, but I'm going to tell you from my perspective, and you can look at me. I'm going to read you this. And so for me, this is why I've always had my faith in God to get me to the next level, because on my own, you're not going to fucking get there. I promise you. It's like you're literally on the ocean, and you could have all the sailing skills in the world, but if you don't have the stars to guide you, you're not going to get across that ocean. This is the sun. There's a different thing. So I'm going to end the podcast. If I read this for you, I'm doing a lot of writing these days. And this is for me. This is for you, Nikki. God is waiting to see if you can pass the test. Without God in your life, it's like watering a plant, expecting it to grow with no sun. Now I'm going to read you this, right? This is Matthew 5:15-16. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it in its stand and give it light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This is why I do this podcast, is to show everybody that you can do it, and I'm literally in that light. And so when I tell you shit, it's from experiences, and I'm going to tell you that I got the merits behind it, multiple merits. But what I want to end this with this is ultimately, everyone out there listening, experience and wisdom, you cannot apply a dollar value to it. It's invaluable. Just use the right experiences, and do not let the bad experiences throw you off your path. So like I said, I read earlier, make sure the people that are in front of you really want the best experience for you, not to cause you the bad experience. But that's what we got. Tune in next Tuesday, 4 o'clock, live from the grill. The Jen and his crew's out.
Harmonix Technologies, your New Mexico business IT solution. With incredible products that will fit your needs both big and small, and unmatched service, it's your vision delivered. Learn how we can help your business roar into action today. Harmonix Technologies, your New Mexico business IT solution.
Take it